Hey, what's up guys, I'm Exteria, and in this video of patch 13.4, I'm going to teach you guys the strongest comp to play in the current meta, Scrap. This comp is so powerful to the point that I'm spamming first and second plays and gain almost 200 LP just forcing this comp only. If you want to see gameplay of this comp, I do have two videos of me playing it from 4-way contested and stay came on top, and even with 1 HP, 7 scrap led me to victory. Those videos will be down in the description. The main carries for this comp is either Gangplank or Corki. It just depends on whatever you have level 2 at the time, and preferably 2 level 2 Gangplanks is the best way to do it. For their core item, both of them having Infinity Edge is very powerful on them, but it's kind of mandatory to have one of them use Last Whisper, because you need the armor break since 70% of your comp is AD, so you're going to need some sort of armor shred. And since you're playing scrap, the best one to use for a scrap item would be Giant's Belt, and the reason why is because I'll show in the next slide. But for flexible items, you can flex any sword item or red buff. Even Guard Breaker is very powerful since it gives you crit, and IE is their core item, so having Guard Breaker with IE is very powerful with that. And the best artifact you can put on them would be Collector for the execution and the crit. Infinity Force is not too bad for stats, and Sniper's Focus, just because their range, it's not bad on them either. I would say Fish and Bones is also pretty good, but it's kind of iffy on Corki since he'll be moving around a lot, and sometimes with that item, he might move into a frontline unit. So if you do get Fish and Bones, just put it on GP, it's more preferable. And speaking of GP, you may notice that you want to play in the backline. So even if you have 2 GPs on the board, both of them should be backline. And if you have a lot of AP items, Ekko is suitable for that. But if you want to see his BIS, mainly you want to put like a Hodge or a Bloodthirster, some sort of lifesteal item. Any AP item on Spark is pretty decent since a magic resist shreds and he can do a lot of damage with it. And then his scrap item, having a rod, is very good on him. So essentially it's just whatever AP items you can find on him, like artifacts like Zonia's or even Seeker's Arm Guard. He's not really like a main carry, but he's good enough to do decent amount of damage. And if you have a lot of AP items, just throw it on him. And at least if you want tank items, you could throw it on her. Even if you don't have scrap on her, it's pretty decent to throw some tank items on her since she's a very powerful unit. The item priority you always want is to build a Last Whisper no matter what. Like I said earlier, most of your comp is AD, so you need that Sunder on the board. And the item priority you should look for on carousels is swords or gloves. When you play 6 scrap, it says in the tooltip that you get lucky items, and what that means is it rigs your scrap item to convert into whatever you see in this chart. The reason why I said put belt on ranks GP and Corki is because when you put belt on them, you're guaranteed our guard breaker. So this is the main reason why you want to put belt on them, because if you have IE on them, a Last Whisper, and you put a belt, you get a guard breaker, so it increases your crit even higher, and it gives you damage amplification since this item is very powerful in the current meta. But if you want to see the other lucky items you can see is right here in front of you. For your first item slam, I do say this a lot, but Last Whisper, you have to make this item no matter what. If you don't make this item, your board will not do enough damage. But other good first item slams you can do is like Infinity Edge or even Guard Breaker. If you have tank components, Sunfire is a way to go since you'll win early game with it. It does damage and it's okay tank stats. Or if you want just like raw tank stats overall, Warmongs or Redemption is fine. I wouldn't really recommend slamming a D-Claw or Bramble. Just use those components to spread out for scrap so you can get more value with it later. But don't be afraid to slam any of the Giant's Belt items because you can build like 4 of these items here. For your opener, you want Manny to be the carry item holder, which is Last Whisper or IE. And then Trundle or Steb can hold the tank items. And they're both bruisers, so you get good synergies with this. Steb and Maddie also gives you Enforcer. And you can throw in a Sniper or a Powder if you want the scrap in for Trundle. The core units you want to play is most of the time is GP or Corki as the main carry. Either one can hold a Last Whisper. The Trundle, you can just keep him in. Same with Powder, you keep her in, and you throw in Elise. Main reason why, because you get Bruiser with Trundle, and you also get Form Swapper with GP. And then an Ekko, and whatever 6 scrap you can find, like either Ziggs or Rumble, you find Rumble first, just sell the Ziggs. Even if the Rumble 1 is more worth it in the long run. And you can throw in +1 unit, like for example, you can throw in 2 GPs on the board, if you have them both level 2, so you can power up your board even stronger. Or if you have a Corki carry, just throw out a Tristana. Or if you want to play both as the carry, like GP and Corki, then you can use Urgot instead, because they give you both Pit Fighter and they give you Artillerist. But I prefer just using a Tristana instead if you want to play for Corki, since you get the Emissary, more attacks be on the board, means more damage. And Pit Fighter 1 is not too important on GP, so I would just prefer to have a Tristana or a second GP instead. Or if you really want the Pit Fighter in for whatever reason, you could throw in a Vi, it's fine as well, because Vi 2 is pretty powerful. At level 9, again, if you don't have another GP, you could throw in GP 2 instead. Or you could throw in a Lowy if you have a Rumble to get that Sentinel in. Or you could throw in a Pit Fighter like Savika, or any of the 6 cost unit here. And if you have a Scrap Emblem, always put it on Elise. She's the best unit to hold it on. And if you do have Scrap Elise, just always throw out another GP because you'll have a lot of shields on the board and GP will do enough damage since Elise will stall with her ability, and since she has a shield, she lasts even longer. You can win fights even better with double GP on the board. Now for the team builder segment, so you guys can see it more clearly and understand it better. For our main opener, it's gonna be a Maddie, and we're gonna represent the carry item holder items as Last Whisper with a Stab, and we're gonna represent the tank item holder with Sunfire and a Trundle. And the fourth unit could be anything. Essentially, it could be powder, so you can get scrap, or you can put in Zeri if you want for sniper. Depending whichever unit is level 2, you put the tank items on Trundle or Steb first. Say for example, you have Steb as the level 2 tank, then you could look for another sniper since Trundle's gonna be level 1, so there's no point to have scrap on him, so he's gonna be weak. Unless you have a component, so you could put maybe the Sunfire on him, plus one component, then just throw out the powder instead. It's kind of worth it in the long run because you have more power then. Or if, for example, you have a level 2 Stab and Trundle, but only level 1 Maddie, just throw the Last Whisper on Trundle instead. You could just mix and match. It's just whatever you have level 2 first. But essentially, if you have level 2 Maddie, we just put the carry item on her, and then level 2 Trundle, just put the tank item on him, it's fine. And if you play this route, over time, you can just add in more scraps like Ziggs, or even a GP, and then just transfer the items to GP when you have 4 scrap right away. It's fine. You can get rid of Maddie if you want, for maybe like an Urgot, so you can get Pit Fighter in. And then once you hit level 8, just roll for your scrap board. GP start, it's essentially just the same thing. It's just this as the opener. You have 3 scrap in. By the time you hit level 5, hopefully you find a Zig, so you get 4 scrap to power up your board. Pretty simple. And then another alternative route that I like to do most of the time is the Draven route, where you have Draven as the item carry holder, and you have Darius as the main tank. Just take out all the scrap units, and you throw in a Mumu with a Violet. And this version is not too bad because you get to get an Econ from Conquer with Draven, and Darius is a pretty decent tank. Or if you have a Mumu level 2 first, and you just put tank item on him. Over time, just look for your scrap units like Trundle, Powder, and even GP and stuff like that. This is just to hold out until you can hit level 8, so you can like play your board later. If not, you can play from a loose string angle, just play whatever board you can, save enough money, hit level 8, and then roll for your scrap board. Now to show the core board, is basically Gangplank, Powder, Trundle. Trundle as Sunfire is actually good. You can just keep it on him since you're gonna have anti-heal anyways from Rumble. But essentially it would be these 3 units with an Ekko and a Corki. And to get our 6, usually it should be Rumble, but most of the time we can't find Rumble. So you could just hold off with Ziggs instead, and we could use him, just position it like something like this. Always put Corki and Gangplank together. Most of the time, if you have 6 grab, you want Corki in the front line, because when he uses his ability, he flies to the back, and he could be safe when his second cast. And the other tank will always be in Elise. If she's not scrap yet, position it in a way where she can survive, because if she dies, she can't cast her ability. And these 2 units will have a lot of shield. From here, you could put on different units. You could throw in, if you have Corki as the main carry instead, then what you can do is you can just use Tristana, so you can get the Artillerist, and you also get Emissary for your board. Unless you have double GP carry instead, which is having 2 level GPs on the board, you could put Last Whisper on one of the main carry GPs instead. Or if you have a scrap emblem on Elise, you can always put 2 level 2 GPs on the board, and you can take out Ziggs, and maybe you can throw in like a Tristana or something, or an Urgot if you want that Pit Fighter, or maybe Vi 2 if you have Vi 2 for whatever reason. You can position it something like this. Once you get the emblem on Elise, you want to put it on the side because you wanted to cast. But you kind of get the idea. You could just mix and match a lot of things. If you have emblem, you can do a lot more things. But if you don't have emblem, then you're going to have to look for a Ziggs instead, or a Rumble. Just some sort of 6 unit for scrap. And then once you hit level 9, then no matter what, you want to throw out a Rumble. And then from here, you can decide to either choose having more value units or more scrap. Like for example, you could just keep the second GP in, or if you find a Victor, honestly I suggest having a Victor out because this unit is very powerful still even after his nerf. Or if for whatever reason you have a level 2 Savika, that's not too bad to have as well, since she will provide a lot of utility. Or you might have a level 2 Elise, that's also fine as well. Or if you want Sentinels in, because Sentinels does work with the shield on scrap, then you can just throw in more armor and magic resist on the board as well. Essentially it's just whatever you can find. but you can take out the Ziggs here. So everything I just shown, Ziggs was supposed to be out the whole time. I forgot to take him out if you have Rumble in. But essentially, yes, it's just mix and match with whatever you can find. And if you want to play for the 9 scrap route, which is very powerful, literally it's just this board with the Ziggs in and you're good to go. For your augments, the one you want to click no matter what would be a scrap crest, since the more scrap you have on the board, the more shields you get, and it makes your board even powerful. All that shimmers is really good to get that collector, since collector is one of the best items for Corki or GP. If you want to BIS your items, component buffet is the way to go, so you can guarantee your items. For every treasure is pretty decent since you get a lot of components, so having scrap on the board with a lot of components means more power. Powered shields, since you have shields on the board, this augment will proc twice, since if you have a shield on the board and it pops, it will proc another one around 50% HP. The other ones are also pretty strong is this augment, top of the scrap heap. I don't really prefer it too much because if you're playing for a loose string angle, this is kind of not worth it, but it's pretty decent since you get some components. Or if you don't start with scrap, there's no point to take this augment either at all. Puttable forage, so you can get pretty decent artifact items, same with living forage. If you need a pretty decent econ augment, raining gold is not too bad for that. Coordination is just a good meta augment since you get a free item and a +1 unit. Immovable object is very powerful for this board since you have a lot of shields. More armor and magic resist on top of it doesn't hurt. And the hero trait reunion with Ekko and Vi is very powerful as well, since it will power up Ekko very hard, and you also can play Pit Fighter with a Vi and a GP. If you're playing for loose streak, what doesn't kill you is probably the best one to use. And the augment power order is always items first. If not, you could always do econ, and if you can't find either of this that's actually good enough, then you can always do a combat augment. For your anomalies, the best one to choose from would be either Corki or Gangplank, and their best one is Attack Expert, where you get more damage for the more you hit, or power absorption, for every unit that dies, they gain some of their AD so they can gain more damage. Or the best one I would say is comeback story. The less HP you are, the more damage amp you get. Essentially, you just want either flat AD or damage amp for either of these units. For your tank side, which is Ekko or Rumble, the best one to choose from is giant size, which is plus 1000 HP. It's always pretty standard. Same with bulwark. This anomaly allows you to get more armor and magic resist if you're above a certain amount of HP, and it does work really well since it will work with the scrap shield, so you get even tankier from that. Or you could do a budget giant size version, which is dramatic entrance. The unit will disappear for about 6 seconds, but they come back, stunning everything on the board for about 2 seconds, and they gain 600 HP on top of that. Or is it 700? Something like that. But essentially, it's just a little bit better than giant size. The playstyle you want to play this at is basically a high tempo fast 8. There's win streak or lose streaking. This what you see here all the way down to green is win streaking, but if you want to play lose streak, essentially is basically just save as much gold as you can, never level, and by the time you hit stage 3-2, then you want to force level 6, because if you don't, you're going to be bleeding out very, very hard. But essentially for win streaking is at stage 2-1, hit level 4, throw another unit so you can keep winning with it. At stage 2-3, always make intervals of 10 gold, because if you don't, you're gonna be poor for the rest of the game. If you have more than 14 gold or 24 gold, 34 gold, something like that, pre-level to 5 and it'll look something like this, because when you hit the next turn after carousel, you have a level 5 shot, so you have a potential 4 cost unit right there. If not, you can skip this part and just hit level 5 at stage 2-4 instead after the carousel. At stage 2-6, always make intervals of 10 gold again. You can do it at stage 2-5 as well, either one's fine, which is like 20, 30, 40 gold. At stage 3-2, hit level 6, which is around your second augment. And then stage 3-7, or even earlier if you want to, hit level 7. And then stage 4-2, or even earlier, 4-1, hit level 8, and then roll for your board. Pretty standard way to play fast 8. And that's it for the strongest comp to play, Scrap. If you have any questions, just let me know down in the comment section below. I'll try to answer to the best of my capabilities. Until then, I'll see you guys on the next one. Later.